I want to talk about sugar. I want to talk about sugar, not sugar as in the sugar that you put in your tea or coffee or whatever. I'm talking about none other than Sugar himself, Sugar Sean O'Malley, because he may have just exposed one of UFC's biggest problems and Dana's best friend. And I'm being sarcastic when I say that Eddie Hearn isn't staying quiet about it, guys. I want to get right into it. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Duality 7X. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Shiraz, and let's talk about Sugar Sean O'Malley because there's a lot of people who think that the UFC did him wrong. So, according to Sugar himself, he made around $600,000 for his win over Ayman Zahabi at UFC Freedom 250. What an unbelievable fight. What an unbelievable card. Ayman, I have to admit, was outclassed, was outworked. Sean O'Malley came in there. He came in with the game plan. He dominated throughout. He dominated right from the beginning, guys. And he walked out with $600,000. And that number actually shocked a lot of people because, especially Eddie Hearn of Matchroom Boxing, he actually went as far to say that there are many boxers who make more money for fighting guys that he could personally beat than Sean O'Malley actually made fighting at one of UFC's biggest stages, biggest platforms on President Trump's birthday to celebrate America's 250th birthday. A lot of people think that Sean should have got paid more for his efforts that night, especially because of the circumstances surrounding the card. So Eddie Hearn actually sent a direct message to O'Malley and he said, grow some balls. Okay. And honestly, look, the story is way bigger than Sean O'Malley himself. I mean, we're talking about fighter leverage. If there's any fighter leverage anymore, we're talking about the pay that fighters should receive and should earn, especially after a fight like what Sugar had gone through. And again, being on one of the biggest platforms, biggest stages in the world on such a historic evening, on such a historic night. I mean, if we're going to complain about Sean O'Malley, then somebody could say, well, look at Cyril Gahn. Cyril Gahn upset Alex Pereira and had probably one of the best fights of his career. Ended up winning the title, and he walked out with about a little over $1.25 million and some change. Whereas Alex Pereira, even though, I mean, although he lost the fight, Alex still walked off at about $10 million. So quite a stark contrast in pay there. But right now, we're going to talk about Sean O'Malley because this might actually be the start of something we've probably never really seen before. I mean, we've been talking about it for quite some time, but never really did a big deep dive into fighter pay like this. But this is starting to come out in the open. A lot of people are talking about this. A lot of people are frustrated. And look, you've got one of boxing's biggest promoters, Eddie Hearn of Matchroom Boxing, and he's openly trying to get UFC fighters to realize that they might actually be worth a lot more than what they're being paid. And that in itself changes the entire conversation as we know it, because Eddie Hearn is not just a boxing promoter. He is also signing MMA talent. He's got Tom Aspinall under his wing. And I'm going to drop a bombshell actually, because he just signed another major fighter. And wait till you hear who he signed. But for that, you're going to have to wait till the end of this, until the end of this video. But look, let's kind of rewind a little bit. Let's talk about what happened here. So to reiterate, Sean O'Malley, he recently revealed that he made roughly $600,000 US for his fight at Freedom 250 against Ayman Zahabi. He admitted that that definitely sucks. I mean, considering the circumstances and comparing to what everyone else was getting paid, yeah, it was a little bit on the low side, 100%. And he said that the pay was around the same as to what he earned against Song Yadong, which was significantly less than what he was fighting for especially when he was defending the title. And also, like, I mean, he fought at UFC Freedom 250. Very, very hard to get on that card. Very hard to be part of that historic evening. You would think that he would have got paid just a little bit more just because it was at the White House, right? I mean, it was such a big card, big event. But anyhow, Eddie Hearn, um, he didn't insult Sean O'Malley by telling him to grow some cojones. Essentially, he called O'Malley a superstar. He said O'Malley could walk through New York City and get mobbed by fans, and then even questioned how somebody with that level of popularity is making that kind of money. It doesn't add up. So before we get any further, I just want to be clear about something. For the average person, $600,000 is life-changing money. It's it's unbelievable. What would you do with $600,000? I know 600,000 things that I could do with that kind of money, but nobody's actually saying that O'Malley's broke, okay? That's not the topic of what that's not the premise of what we're trying to get to here. That's not even the discussion. The discussion is about the value that these fighters, like especially like Sean O'Malley, bring to the cage every time he's asked to come and fight. And look, the question you got to ask yourself is, what do you think Sean O'Malley is actually worth to the UFC? I'm sure he has a number as to what he feels he's worth, but that's kind of where it gets a little bit interesting because look, Sean O'Malley isn't just another ranked fighter. Okay, we're talking about a former champion, probably one of the most marketable personalities in the sport, a guy who has got 1 million plus viewers, a very unique look, so you can spot him from a mile away, and he's got a fan base that buys pay-per-views. Let that sink in for a second, guys. Think about that. This guy is a walking marketing machine. And for him to just get paid $600,000, it's actually an insult. It really is. Because the UFC they've spent years and invested umpteens of thousands of dollars in promoting guys like Sean O'Malley, particularly Sean O'Malley, because we're talking about Sugar as probably one of the biggest stars. So if he's up there in your upper echelon elite tier of fighters, why is his pay not, equal to his star status, to his fandom? Right? Those are the questions that are not going away. They're just getting louder and louder and louder, especially on social media. But look, the UFC pay debate has always had one massive problem. Nobody with real star power has been really trying to push back on that. Fighters do complain. Fighters all complain about a lot of things all the time, but the machine continues to move forward and nobody seems to do anything about it. So the question is, why not? Well, first of all, the UFC has a lot of leverage. They're a self-contained own ecosystem with their own belts, their own accolades, own rankings. You don't fight in the UFC and get to go fight in PFL or Bellator or any other kind of competing MMA organization. It just doesn't work that way. Yes, you'll be able to compete in places like RAF, Real American Freestyle Wrestling. You might even be able to get away with an exhibition, boxing fight, or gig. But if you're an active UFC fighter, you do not get to fight MMA in another MMA organization, right? So essentially, your employer is kind of monopolizing your ability to perform outside of your scope of employment. So they do have the leverage, all right? They have the biggest platform right now. They've teamed up with the FBI, they've teamed up with the White House. There's so many different kinds of affiliations and initiatives in place. Technically, the UFC's got the audience, guys, and that's why Dana, with this new venture with Zuffa Boxing, he knows exactly what he's sitting on. He's not even in a rush to get Zuffa off the ground. It's not even a matter of if, it's a matter of when Zuffa starts to explode. He's already signed some pretty big fighters to that organization, and it's going to be basically cookie cutter from the UFC. He's going to take what works within the UFC and he's going to apply the same kind of protocol, the same kind of hierarchical structure into Zuffa boxing. So it's going to be its own self-contained kind of ecosystem. And for now, fighters do get the ability to fight outside of Zuffa, but we'll see for how long. Now, let's get back to the UFC, for example, because look, they understand that the fighters, if they wanted to, can push hard. But if they do continue to push hard, it's going to leave a black eye on their employment to the point where UFC may not want to push them any further. It's kind of like the entertainment industry. You heard it so many times before with a lot of big marquee singers and entertainers. And as soon as they start questioning the system, uh, calling certain people out, questioning the antics and um, the operations of the people who are running, operationally speaking, the people who are running the industry. Next thing you know, those particular individuals, they don't really get promoted as much. They don't get pushed hard enough, and they end up falling by the wayside, right? So, anyways, I'm not saying that the UFC is an evil machine, but if they wanted to, they can not only make careers, but they can destroy them just as quick. So, fighters know what they have, what they're capable of doing, but the question is whether or not they're going to do something. But Eddie Hearn, he's not tied to the UFC. He's not under contract, contractually speaking, to the UFC. He does have MMA talent who fight in the UFC who are currently signed with him. So he has in his right every opportunity to talk about this, to expose it, to kind of bring it to light, so that he himself, if he feels he's trying to create some kind of justice, some kind of platform for the fighters, he can go ahead and do that all day long. And I mean, ultimately, he's trying to get the UFC to buckle under pressure, and that's the game plan, right? So look, the fighters have this mindset that, if I don't do it, I'm good. If I like if I'm gonna essentially get benched, right? And so, like, whether you agree with Eddie Hearn or disagree with him, I mean, it's all about perception at the end of the day, because honestly, perception matters. Perception is huge. The optics of what people do are huge, especially in the industry of MMA, right? Just look around. What's happening in the sport itself? I mean, I talk about Eddie Hearn, one of boxing's biggest promoters, who signed probably one of UFC's biggest fighters, the current heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall, as a client. And here's a bombshell for you guys, but Eddie Hearn just signed Ian Machado Garry. That's right. He just signed Ian Machado Garry as well. And both of these guys have made it extremely crystal clear that this isn't about leaving the UFC. They have no intention to leave the UFC. It's about building their brands outside of the world of UFC. And they feel confident in Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing that can be done. So that's important. So look, for years, the UFC has been the brand. All right. The organization that's always been bigger than individual fighters. And what happens if more fighters start building leverage outside of the octagon, right? If this experiment with Tom Aspinall, Ian Machado Garry proved to be successful, it's going to be a big, huge uh, storyline, and a lot of fighters are going to catch wind of it. And I could see a lot more fighters coming on board and signing with the likes of people like Eddie Hearn, perhaps maybe even Frank Warren of Queensberry. And you never know. Oscar De La Hoya of Golden Boy might be in the wings as well too. He might also take on some MMA fighters as well too. Why not? Right? Why not? If Eddie Hearn's getting into the gig, if he's getting into the game, and if he sees potential, other people are going to smell that, and they're going to say, hey, if Eddie Hearn can do it, I can do it just as good, if not better. So anyways, guys, that's what happens if more and more fighters start to build leverage outside of the octagon. And excuse me, word is going to travel. It's going to get out there. People are going to talk about it, and that's when things start to crumble. As well, I mean, as many MMA fighters that could potentially cross over, and I'm not saying cross over as in leaving the UFC, but signing with Eddie Hearn to make Eddie Hearn that their promoter and agent, as so to speak. There's a lot of boxers that are actually leaving 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 Eddie Hearn and going over to the likes of Dana White, just like Conor Benn. And there's a lot more fighters that are doing that as well too. So the question is, what happens if more fighters develop sponsors, media opportunities, and business relationships that make them less dependent on one paycheck, right? And so these are the things I'm sure the UFC is talking about, their brass, the operations team, and it creates even a bigger question. Who is actually going to be the fighter that challenges the status quo? Who's going to come out there and say it? I mean, it could be Tom Aspinall, could be in Machado Garry. I don't know. But if Sean O'Malley won't do it, if he's keeping quiet and he's just silently protesting, well, somebody else has got to do it. I mean, if they want to do it, right? A lot of people don't want to be, no, I'm not going to say the guinea pig, but they don't want to sacrifice their career or sacrifice themselves to be the savior of all other fighters. But anyways, guys, Conor McGregor, he kind of sort of did it. I mean, but he's got leverage. He's one of the biggest names in MMA, the biggest names in combat sports. I mean, he became bigger than the sport itself. Francis Ngannou eventually, he pushed back in his career, and then he eventually left, right? And he even did PFL. Then he signed with Jake Paul's MVP team. He's flirted with boxing a little bit. So, I mean, Francis can do it. A lot of other guys can do it as well too. I mean, everybody knows it's there, it exists, but a lot of people are reluctant on wanting to be the guy to come out and actually openly talk about it and expose it, if you will. So, I mean, if nobody really has the power to change it, which nobody's saying, all lies in one individual, but maybe nobody actually wants to go ahead and take that risk. That's a fair argument. So as for Eddie Hearn, I kind of understand what exactly he's trying to say and what he's trying to do, but he's coming from boxing, of course, right? And in boxing, the biggest fighters can demand whatever kind of a money they want. They demand massive purses, right? So the power structure in boxing is a lot different than the power structure when it comes to the world of MMA. Fighters often have more negotiating leverage. The UFC model isn't built that way, right? Again, you're in a self-contained ecosystem with Dana White sitting at top of the pyramid and everybody else here. Whereas in boxing, it's kind of almost like an inverted pyramid, but the fighters are almost equal with the promoters in a lot of instances, right? So the UFC model is a very, very centralized system, and it's not going to change. It's not going to yield from that. And that's why conversations like this are becoming quite controversial, but they're starting to gain a lot of traction, a lot of steam, because a lot of people are comparing MMA pay to boxing pay, and that the numbers in itself look entirely different, rightfully so. So look, here's my take. Sean O'Malley, I believe, deserved more than $600,000. I mean, if he is truly one of UFC's biggest names, biggest talents, biggest fighters, biggest stars, yeah, he should have got at least a million plus. But at the same time, I don't think we're suddenly about to see fighter revolution here. So don't even worry about that, guys. The UFC's business model has worked for a very, very long time. It's that cog, that machine that continues to steamroll past everybody. So many other organizations, fighters have tried to be the hero before, tried to step up, and they just get steamrolled over this massive, massive juggernaut called the UFC. All right. And most fighters still want to be in the UFC. They don't want that to change. You're in the UFC, you're in the elite echelon of MMA, of combat sports. If you're fighting in another organization, that doesn't undermine your capabilities, your abilities as a fighter. But come on, clearly UFC is the bigger promotion out there, right? So the platform itself sells itself, it markets itself. And if you want to be a part of that centralized ecosystem, then you have to comply to the policies that have been outlined in your contractual agreement with the UFC. So I do think that the story gains a lot of traction. I think there's some merit to this. I believe there's some value as well too. I think we're going to continue to talk about this. But I mean, look, when you have one of the company's biggest names publicly reveal their purse, it in a way it's kind of protesting, but in their indirect kind of a way, right? It puts a fighter back into the spotlight, and eventually enough of these conversations are going to start to create more pressure to the point even more people, more fighters, people in the industry, stakeholders, people with invested interests are going to take notice, and they're going to start talking about it. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, but eventually it will happen. So anyways, guys, I hope you like this one. Lots to talk about here. If you're enjoying the sports analysis here, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you're always kept in the know of what's going on. Smash a like and subscribe. And we're continuously bringing storylines from the world of combat sports, MMA primarily, the UFC, boxing, WWE. And there's no fluff here, guys, you know, just real fight talk. And question I have for all of you guys before we part ways here is, at the end of the day, Sean O'Malley's $600,000 payday. Do you think that was fair? Do you think it was fair for Sean to just make that kind of money? Or should he just be happy and shut the F up and walk away with this money? I mean, look, that's a lot of money to guys like you and I, but for people like Sean, maybe it's not a lot of money for what he has to do to earn that kind of a paycheck. I don't think there's a lot of people who could do that. Anyways, it's really about what the UFC stars are worth. I think he should be worth more. I think he should have got paid more. And it's about whether fighters are starting to really finally realize that building their brand outside the cage might just be as important as what they do inside of the cage, right? I don't know if you agree with me on that, but if Eddie Hearn from Matchroom Boxing, a boxing promoter, if he's right and these fighters are worth more than what they're getting paid, then the conversation's just getting started, guys. And I have a feeling this won't be the last time you hear about a UFC star publicly question what they're making. So please share your thoughts and comments, guys. I want to hear from you because your thoughts are what matter. That's what I want to know. Let's create a conversation, guys. Let's debate. Was Sean O'Malley underpaid, or is this simply the reality of doing business with one of the biggest promotions in the world, the UFC? Let me know in the comments, guys, because this one is definitely going to divide the masses. It was a pleasure, guys. Pleasure was all mine today, and I look forward to catching you guys in the next one.